Welcome to today's October favorites and fails video. I was out a lot of October, but I did test some of these products in the end of September. I did test some of them when I came back from California in October. So I do have a pretty good roundup of things. So I'm gonna break them up into categories, starting with how I would normally apply my makeup. So it would be like primers, eyeshadow bases, etc. I do wanna mention the products that I took with me when I went to California, because these were the only things that I had the entire time I was there. And I did come back to Florida for a week and I had a chance to like re-up on my makeup, but I was still so sound in what I had chosen that I didn't really change anything out. 3 of these products are new to me, and then 3 of them are not. I have had them in my collection a while, but I've pulled them back out again, and I was thoroughly enjoying them. One of the things that you always look for when you travel, or at least I do, is that it's just a tried and true makeup set. Every day you're feeling confident because you don't have another foundation to grab if the one that you brought with you doesn't work. I was moving things, I was in a totally different environment, so there were days that I was just packing, and so I was being pretty rough on my makeup. So I needed something that I knew would last and that I really trusted to make me look good and make me feel confident, and these were the items that I took. So the first one that I have is the Best Skin Ever from Sephora. This I have almost used all the way up. This is the only thing that I took with me in terms of foundation. I did not bring another one. Think of that I purchased this sometime in the beginning of September, but I immediately fell in love with it upon trying it, and then it became like one of my favorites for the month, and I knew that this one doesn't separate on me. It lasts all day. It's such a beautiful finish. It's perfect. It's just the right amount of coverage. Honestly, this is my favorite foundation in my entire collection. It's just for my personal preference. I get a lot of like breaking apart on my nose. I get a lot of uneven wearing down on my foundations. And then some foundations really just need to be set with something super heavy because of the formula that they are. And I really didn't want to take a setting spray. So this one lasted throughout the day. It wore down evenly, and it was the right amount of coverage for me. I was pretty hard on my makeup all day. This one, I can't say that I like any other foundation in my collection more than this one right now. So just for my personal preferences, this was a huge winner, and I have used almost all of it up. I don't know when the last time I've used a foundation up was. Probably 4 or 5 years ago, before I started building like my makeup collection. That was like when I purchased one foundation and I didn't have any other in my collection. So for me to have like 40 foundations and for this one to be the one that I came back, didn't replace, wanted to take again with me, and to have used almost the whole thing up is a big deal. Next is not a new product to me. It is the Dior Forever Skin Correct Concealer. I needed a concealer that I knew wasn't going to like separate or crease under my eyes. I needed something that I felt like I could also spot conceal with, that would do the trick for both under my eyes and spot concealing, something that I knew would last all day, that would provide the right amount of coverage, because I was sleeping maybe like 4 or 5 hours some nights. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. So this is the one I took. I knew that I loved this concealer, but when I looked in my drawer of like 30 concealers, I was like, which one am I gonna take? Which one do I know that I love that works really well? And it was this one. And again, when I came back and I had a chance to re-up my supply, I just continued to use this one, took it with me. I'm a huge fan of Dior product, and because I loved this so much, I did go ahead and purchase the Dior Forever like skin foundation. I'm not sure what the full name of it is, but I am wearing it today, and I will link everything that I'm wearing on my face down below so you will be able to see it. I do like that foundation. It's working well with my dry skin. I'm not having any issues with it. We'll see how it continues to hold up. This is only the second time that I've worn it, but I just loved this concealer so much that I had to purchase a foundation. The next product is also not new to me, and it is a Dior product. It is the Backstage Face and Body Powder No Powder. So I know that when I set my face, I'm looking for something that not just like sets it, but also gives me like a good finish. Like it will touch up some of the foundation underneath. And this is really the one that I reach for here at home when I know that that's something that I need something that's uncomplicated throughout the day that I can really trust. And so when it came down to which powder do I grab, I mean, I had a couple of choices, but I knew this one was a tried and true. So I did take this with me. I have officially panned it. I cannot tell you when the last time I have panned a product was. Probably as long ago as I've finished a foundation. So for me to have panned this, also to have come back and could have changed out the stuff that I took with me on travel, and I didn't. That was a good one. 3 products that I did change out when I came back was my blush, bronzer, and highlighter. I did take different ones with me. This one is the Tarte Blush Authority Amazonian Clay. It's the cheek wardrobe. This was a release for holiday and it was 2 years ago. Now we're coming on this holiday season. It would have been 3. But the reason that I wanted to take and travel with this one is because it comes with all 3. I get a bronzer, a blush, and a highlighter. And I do like all of these. I think that the bronzer has a good shimmer to it. It gives a good luminosity. It's a good shade. It's very neutral. The blush is an everyday color, but I was also using it for eyeshadow. So I really didn't take like an eyeshadow palette with me. Well, I did, but I never ended up using it. I just used this and then this all over and then this on my lid. The highlighter in here, I love it. It does have a good amount of staying power. Even though these products are older, they're coming up on 3 years, they still performed great. They had good lasting power. I was thoroughly enjoying this. And again, I was using it as kind of an all-in-one product. There were some times where I would use this as eyeshadow, but mostly it was this is eyeshadow all over and then this on the lid, like I said before. So I've made it very messy, and none of my makeup products get this messy. Like when I'm here at home and applying my makeup, I just am not the kind of person that like lets my product get like this. I usually clean it up, but because I was on the go, this was what I grabbed. I was like getting my makeup done in 10 minutes. That's all the time that I had to dedicate to it. I was reaching for this. I was making a mess of it. It just performed so great. Even though these aren't available, or this exact one isn't available for purchase anymore, Tarte does usually release cheek authorities or blush authorities like this every holiday. I don't know that I've seen them come out with them for this holiday, but I did see them like last year, and they were in a different packaging, but they were similar, that they came with a trio like this. They were like rounded instead of rectangle like this one is. So here are the shades. I just think that they were beautiful. They're just natural, everyday, gorgeous. They performed well. So I was very pleased to have taken this. The next product that I brought with me was a new to me product. It had arrived right before I left, so I did take it with me, and it was more just for an opportunity to test it out. This is from Roen Beauty. This is one of their cream blushes. I have dug into this. I have made a huge mess of this blush. It is in the shade Natural Rose. It's just a very beautiful shade. It's like a mauve-y color, but it had good staying power. But that's really all I could ask of it while I was traveling and needed something uncomplicated. Here is the swatch on that. It's just beautiful. It went on very easily. I just applied it with this, my same powder blush brush that I brought. I only brought one. I think it did a really good job. I did place an order for a couple of Roen products, and so far I'm liking some of the products that I have tried, but I can say that the cream blush was a winner. I think it has a good amount of base to it. I just think it lasted. One of the things that I was doing was, checking my makeup throughout the day, and then when I was like testing this one out, I would look and see, oh, my blush is still there. I was leaving at like 8 o'clock in the morning and coming back at like 8, 9 o'clock at night, so I would have the makeup on for like at least 12 hours a day, and this was staying, so I was pleased with that. The next product that I have is also a new to me product. It is the Haus Labs Lip Oil. This one is in the shade, I believe this one is in the shade Tint. It does say PhD Hybrid Lip Oil, and it is pink. I brought this with me and a matte lipstick from Urban Decay. The Urban Decay one was also new. I really loved that. Maybe it was a satin finish, I don't know, but I wanted something that was a little bit more hydrating, so I threw this in my bag and I did like it. I do think that this is kind of a high-priced lip oil. I think all lip oils are that don't come from the drugstore, so I think those are my only cons, is that it's just not a really long-lasting formula. I think it's a little bit high-priced, but it does give a good finish. I can say at least that much. So now I want to move on into the October faves and fails. I want to start with primer. So the first one that I have is from Wet n Wild. I did a full face of like all makeup, drugstore makeup under $5, so I picked this up. This was one of the very few primers that actually was under $5 or around the $5 range. Wet n Wild is one of those drugstore brands that really has stayed pretty affordable when a lot of other drugstore brands are raising their prices. I went and I purchased like a Wet n Wild product at the store the other day, and the blush was like $3.99, and then I purchased one from Revlon that was very similar and it was like $12.99. I thought, wow, that's a huge difference for a product that's almost the same. So you can see that Wet n Wild is targeting to stay in that affordable price range and hasn't really adjusted their prices for inflation. So I picked this up because I felt that it seemed like something that I would really like. It is the primer serum and it brightens. So this one I almost would equate as like a dupe for the Natasha Denona Hygiene Skin Glass. They have a very, very similar finish. They're very like watery. They're both primer serums, but they both give this like really, really glowy finish. It sinks into the skin very nicely. It feels very hydrating. I don't know that it brightens as much as it gives just kind of a really radiant finish to the skin. I don't think it's as thick as the Natasha Denona Hygiene Skin Glass, but I would say for an affordable like alternative, I think this one is a really good one. So far, I'm really liking it. When I think to reach back for a primer right now, it usually means that something in it stands out for me because I'm just not reaching for primers as much as I used to. So I will reach for them occasionally, but not on an everyday basis. I just think this is a really, really hydrating formula and it's super inexpensive. The next primer that I have is from Hard Candy. This is the Sheer Envy Hydrating Primer. Their Hydrating Jelly Primer did win Allure Best of Beauty for 2022. I did go and look for it. I could not find the jelly primer, but I was able to find this one. I don't know if that means they've repackaged because I believe the formula is exactly the same. They've just changed the naming. So this one here is a dupe for the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip. It's a very similar consistency. It's a very similar color. It's very tacky, very sticky. It just is a very grippy primer. I honestly believe that this was made so that it was a dupe for the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip because that is such a popular product. And I would say that they succeeded in this. Leave this one in the steals category for best drugstore primers. I would say that they nailed it out of the park with this particular formula. I do believe, again, that it is hydrating, it is sticky, it does have that tack to it, and I didn't have any issues with it under my makeup. So that one was a good one for me. Moving on into eye primers, this one's gonna have to go into the fails list. This is the Beauty Crop Stuck On You Eyeshadow Primer. This looks like it is in the shade Base. I did get this in a BoxyCharm, but I do try everything out that comes in BoxyCharm. This was a very thin formula. I mentioned this in a couple of videos where I tried this for the first time, that its thickness was a cross between Urban Decay and the ABH, a much thicker primer. Initially, I did like this because I do like the shade. I think it actually gives a little bit amount of coverage. I thought that the shadows that I was using on top of it looked good, but ultimately I did find that some of the shadows that I was wearing over it weren't sitting very well. They were skipping. There were parts of my eye that the shadow wouldn't lay down properly. So for that reason, it just had to go into the fails for me. All right, next I want to move on into foundations. I do have 4 foundations here. I think that one is a fail, 2 are definitely faves, and 1 is in the middle. So I'll start with the faves. This one is the Dr. Jart BB Beauty Balm. I loved this. It has a very, very hydrating formula. It's got a good amount of coverage to it. It just gives a very, very nice finish to the skin. It's a perfect, perfect balm or foundation to wear on a beach day. One of the things that I worry about in Florida and the humidity is that I have a foundation that's just too thick, that separates on my skin, it slips off, it goes away after I start sweating throughout the day. I could sweat immediately from walking to my front door to my car, and I just don't get that with this. It gives such a radiant finish, and it stays dewy, and I really like it. It is actually very unique in my collection. I don't have anything that stays quite as dewy, but offers as much coverage, and the dewiness isn't oily or greasy. So this is a reformulation. This wasn't necessarily a new product. The reformulation did come out, I believe, in September sometime when this did drop. I'm a huge, huge fan of this. This right now is probably my second favorite foundation after the Sephora Best Skin Ever foundation. So really, really loving this. Works great for my dry skin. Another one of my faves is the Haus Labs Triclone Skin Tech Foundation. This was such a beautiful finished foundation. It was lightweight enough, but offered a good amount of coverage. Kind of what I'm looking for is a foundation that's more like lightweight or medium weight. I really can't take heavy foundations on my skin. They just don't work. They separate in weird ways. And I have fine lines, and so heavier foundations tend to sink in a little bit more. More matte finishes don't work well on my skin. I just thought that this is a really beautiful finish. I think that the formula is very nice. I believe that like it's that lightweight, medium weight formula that just looked really good, didn't break apart strangely me throughout the day. And I thought the foundation lasted a pretty good amount of time throughout the day. So that one was also another winner for the month of October for me. The next one I'm on the fence about. This was one that I've had my eye on for a really long time. I pulled the trigger and purchased it when the shade that I wanted came back in stock in Sephora. So this is the Shiseido Synchro Skin Radiant Lifting Foundation. It seemed like a foundation that would work well for my dry skin. It also seemed like something that was like lightweight and that offered like a medium amount of coverage but was good for someone with dry skin. But it just kind of was heavier formula than I actually thought it was going to be. It has a stick to it. And so with the heavier consistency, less is more in this situation for me, because it did start to look a little bit cakey. It did start to kind of break apart in different areas on my face as I was touching it. I don't really love that, and I don't find that lighter weight or medium weight foundations do that. I feel like they sink into my skin a little bit better. They break apart evenly. I just wasn't getting that with this. I'd say that this was definitely like a middle of the road. I really liked the finish, but I think as I wore it, it just broke down strangely, and I didn't love that. So I think I need to keep testing this out and try a lighter layer of the foundation kind of all over evenly and see how I like it. Right now, it's kind of just in the middle for me. The reason that it's definitely in the middle is because I had higher expectations. I was thinking it would perform more like the Haus Labs, but it's just a heavier formula. Let's move on into concealers. I have 4 concealers here. 2 are definitely faves. 1 is a fail and 1 is in the middle. So we'll start with the faves. This one is the Milk Makeup Future Fluid All Over Cream Concealer. This is such a great concealer. It has a radiant finish. I think it's a medium coverage. I believe that it's lightweight. Don't think that it creases under your eyes. I think it has good lasting power to it. I think it's a more sticky formula, but it's just overall such a great concealer. There's nothing bad to say about this. It provides the right amount of coverage. It doesn't crease. It doesn't cake. It is a pretty thin consistency, but it's almost like radiant, but not too radiant. It's just the right amount. It's just right in the middle, and it's perfect. I love this. I have been loving this. I think this is a really good one. Definite recommend for me. The next one is a fave, but unlike the Milk Makeup, it is not a new release by any means. I bought this concealer for the full face of affordable makeup under $5, or as close to the $5 mark as I could get. This was the Wet n Wild Incognito All Day Full Coverage Concealer. I thought this was a pretty nice concealer in that it was a good finish. It had a good consistency. I think it was a medium coverage. I don't think that it was full coverage by any means, but it didn't crease, it didn't cake, it had good lasting power. It's a pretty thin formula, and it's so inexpensive. So this is kind of one of those that didn't stand out as like, oh my gosh, this is the best concealer I have in my entire collection. It was just one that I know performs like some of my high-end ones. It was a really good one. I am a really big fan of Wet n Wild products lately. I just think that they perform really well. They're mostly never disappointing, and they're so affordable. So that's a good one. One of the ones that's in the middle is the Maybelline Super Stay 30-Hour Concealer. This did just win Allure Best of Beauty for 2022. I just can't say that that's what I would have given it. I think it's a very thick formula. I believe that it does crease under the eyes. I think that it does have the tendency, if you put on too much, to really look cakey under the eyes. I don't hate this concealer. I think that it is a very full coverage concealer. So if that's something that you're into, I think that it has a good amount of coverage to it, but I think it's a more drying formula. It's just pretty thick. The reason that I would say this is still like in the middle for me is that I will use this concealer to clean up any eyeshadow if I've like messed it up over my foundation, and it provides a really precise line. I just wouldn't use this for anything else. I don't like it under my eyes. If it was a darker shade, I could probably spot conceal with this, but other than that, it's kind of useless in my collection because it's just too heavy a concealer for me. The next one that I have that is a fail is the She Glam concealer. This is just one that is kind of too heavy for me. It's not one that I would use under my eyes because it's a more heavy concealer. This obviously is a shade that I believe is just way too light for me. You can see it against the Milk Makeup one. It's a much lighter shade, which I actually find quite surprising since the shade is vanilla, and in like the NYX Serum concealer and other concealers, I do have the shade vanilla and it works just fine. This one looks almost like ghostly snow, so I think it's very pale in their shade range, and so I don't like it also for that reason. But it is just a very, very heavy consistency. It does seem to like crease under my eyes. It's really affordable, and I think some of the SheGlam products are really nice. I just didn't enjoy this one, and because it is kind of a more like fluffy doe foot applicator, it's not really as good as the Maybelline Superstay for like cleaning things up, because this has a very, very precise pointy tip, and that's one of the reasons that I really, really like this for cleaning up my eyeshadow. So this one I can't really recommend. It was a fail for me. Let's move on into powders. This was another one that I purchased for a full face of affordable makeup. This is the Rimmel Stay Matte powder. This one is in the shade Transparent. This claims to be a lightweight mattifying powder that lasts up to 5 hours. I thought the 5 hours part was pretty interesting that they claimed only 5 hours, because it's unusual for brands to claim that they only last up to 5 hours, but I really thought it was a very truthful claim. I liked that it only stayed good for 5 hours. Overall, Rimmel is a super, super affordable drugstore brand. It's one of those that I think also really hasn't raised their prices. A lot of times their stuff is on sale in the drugstore and sold in Walmart. And the reason that I really like this powder is because it's a lightweight powder. It's really, really finely milled. I am always looking for a powder that's really finely milled, something that's lightweight, still sets my makeup down, but doesn't make me look cakey. And I do find that with this. I have been wearing this the last couple of days in a row. I do like this. I can't wear powders that are too heavy. They immediately become a fail for me because I'm just super dry skin. Powders is just one of those categories that my face just doesn't handle very much versatility. It has to be pretty thin, otherwise it just won't work for me at all. So that brings me to my next one, which is the Wowder. This is from Glossier. This is a powder that I have kept in the box because immediately when trying it, I really wasn't sure that it was going to work for me. It was a very heavy powder. It immediately just kind of sat on my skin. It didn't seem to like sink in very well. It's a very, very silky formula, and it feels beautiful when you touch it. It's just kind of a heavier formula, and it sat on my skin and made me look very dry. I think even putting it on the back of my hand, it's still kind of just like sitting there. I don't know if you can see that, but it just didn't work for me. I did try it a couple of times, and I kept it in the box because I thought right away, I think I'm probably gonna declutter this. And I am. I'm gonna give it to my sister or see if she wants it. She does have oily skin type, so I think this may work for her. It's just not gonna work for me and my dry skin, so this was a fail. The last one that I have here is from Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Airbrush Brightening Flawless Finish Powder. I liked this. I would say this is one of those middle of the road products because I do love the original powder that she has in the same kind of compact. It is a finely milled formula, and it works really well for my dry skin, but this one felt like it wasn't as finely milled, and maybe it's just the shade match here, but because it's a like white finishing powder, it just kind of sat on my skin. It didn't like sink in all the way. It wasn't as heavy as the Wowder from Glossier. It was a little bit lighter weight than that. I just don't love that it was like this really white shade that claimed to be transparent. It claims to be a complexion perfecting powder with micro powders. I just felt that the other powder that she had was more lightweight than this. I didn't think this was better than the other one. I was kind of hoping that it was, otherwise why get it if I have one that I absolutely love, but this just wasn't better than the other one. So while it's okay, I would say that I could maybe powder like the outside of my face, like setting a blush or something like that, but I really didn't like it for the center of my face and under my eyes. So let's move on into brow products. I only have 2 brow products. The first one that I have is the Brow Flick from Glossier. This is in the shade Taupe. I didn't like this at all. I feel like I was shaking this pen 300 times just to get a very, very light swatch on this. It was taking a huge amount of effort. There is it built up about 12 times. So it's just very, very light. I don't necessarily think that it's the shade. I felt like it kept drying out and I wasn't getting a lot of pigment that was transferring to my eyebrows. It's just not quick and easy that I like, and I really didn't like the wet formula. That might be for some people, but if I was gonna use a wet formula, I feel like I would use a thinner brush tip than this, or at least have one that was really pigmented on the end of the brush, because if you use the end of the brush, you don't get a whole lot of pigment that comes off. And so it's not really good for creating really precise brow strokes in the front of your eyebrows. And the wet formula, it just seemed to take a while to dry down, and I could feel the texture like on my eyebrows. I just really wasn't a fan of that. One that I did really like was the Instant Brow Lift from e.l.f. This has a bigger point on it than maybe your Benefit Precisely My Brow or like a micro brow pencil, but I like it. I like that it has a spoolie on one side. This is in the shade Taupe, which I would say is way too dark of a shade for the shade Taupe, but I find that in a lot of drugstore brow products that their Taupe is sometimes much darker than the higher end where you get a little bit more variation in tone and depth. So I liked this. I thought it was quick and easy. I didn't mind the formula, and I thought it had really good lasting power, and I believe this retails for $3. At least that's what I purchased it for. Again, I will link all the products and the prices down below. So that one was a win for me. And moving on into blush products, I have 3 products here. So the first one that I have is from Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Pillow Talk Beautifying Face Palette. This was a new release. This is a baked formula, and this does come with 4 different shades. And the way they classify this is a soft blush, this is a super glow, this is a super blush, and a multi glow. I liked this. One of the things that I was really worried about with these baked formulas is that it was going to be hard to pick up on a fluffy brush, and that just wasn't the case. I thought these were really pigmented. I thought they were very creamy. I liked all of the shades. I liked the variety in this, that you have more of a mauve tone and then kind of a pinker pop of color there. I thought both of these were good. I enjoyed the highlighter. It is a high price point, but I wasn't disappointed with the formula. The next blush I have was also a new release. This is one of the Luminous Matte Blushes from Gucci. I picked up mine in the shade Rosy Beige. I traveled with this on my first trip to California, and I was just loving the heck out of this blush. So it is a matte finish with a little bit of luminosity. There is the shade there. I did rank this as like number 2 blushes, powder blushes in my collection right now. I think just behind the Buxom primer infused blushes. And one of the things that makes this rank a little bit lower is that it is a pricier blush. That has nothing to do with the formula. It is just very expensive on its own. I do like me a high-end blush. I like a luminous matte, I like matte, I like luminosity, I like all different kinds of blushes. I thought this had really good staying power. It was a really good one, and it's just like number 2 in my powder blush collection right now, and it was something that I traveled with that I liked it that much. Really good shade. I would consider picking up more shades if my collection wasn't as big as it is. I just don't think I need to. I just do or can recommend this product. It is just a very high price point. Another blush that I'm absolutely loving right now is the Giorgio Armani Neo Nude Blush. This is a cream to powder formula. I have heard that these have been sold out in stores for quite a bit of time. I did purchase mine online, and I did get this recently, only because I was searching for cream blush products on Sephora's website. So it's a very soft, very silky texture, but the pigmentation on this is fabulous. It's one of those that I was like swatching on my haul video, and it kind of just kept going down my arm. It is so pigmented. A little bit of this product goes a super long way. I love the cream to powder formula. I love the finish on this blush. I just love it. There's nothing about this that I don't love. Lasts a really long time. It is a super high price point, but for cream, I just think that it does something a little bit different than other blushes in my collection, the fact that it is so pigmented. And if I hadn't done such a deep swatch on this first one, I could have drug it out even more, but it's very pigmented. A little bit goes a long way. This is probably my favorite cream blush at the current moment. Let's move on into bronzers next. So I have 4 bronzers here. The first one that I have is from Chanel. This was the Le Beige Cream Bronzer. This one was in the shade Soleil Tan Bronze. I was definitely late in picking this product up. I didn't get it when it first released, but I do believe that this is the reformulation. I did do a cream bronzer try-on video some videos ago, maybe a couple of months ago, and that's when I hauled this. I kept it up on my vanity to continue trying to use it, and I just love it. Every single time I use it, it's very uncomplicated. It's a pretty neutral shade. It's not too warm on me. One of the things that I'm like comparing it against is the warmth against some of the other cream bronzers that I have hauled and recently tried lately. And this one just is a little bit better. It's a creamier formula, it lasts a little bit longer, and it's not as much warmth. Again, very pricey item, but I do really love the formula and the shade on this. Another product that I have that is slightly weird was a haul that I placed with Glossier, and this was probably 2 months back. So this is one of their solar paints. It is a liquid bronzer in the shade Flare. This is a unique product because I don't have anything that's like this, but it is a bronzer on a doe foot applicator. But it's more like a contour, if you ask me. I think it's a little bit too dark of a shade to be a bronzer in the lightest shade that they sell, but they do classify this as a liquid bronzer. I think it has a little bit more warmth than some of my other liquid contours, so in that way I can see how they can market this as a bronzer. I just don't absolutely love the application on this. I think that it's a very, very emollient formula, as opposed to something like the Milani one or the Charlotte Tilbury contours where you kind of dot those on and much less product comes out, and it's kind of a drier formula. This is very, very wet, and so I kind of paint it on as opposed to like just dotting it on. It's not my favorite application, but I do like this product. I think that it is a little bit expensive for how I feel about it. I don't think it's my favorite liquid bronzer or contour in my collection. And Glossier tends to be a little bit pricier, so I think it was good. I just wouldn't repurchase this. I don't think it was great. 3 more bronzers here. So this is a New Age bronzer from Winky Lux. This is a stick bronzer, and this is in the shade Golden Touch. This is another bronzer that I purchased for my Try and Create bronzers video, and it's a very, very like hard kind of sticky formula. I think it's a really, really good shade for my fair skin. I just felt that it was like a very, very like sticky, kind of tough formula, and it kind of drug across my cheek when applying it. I did try it with like just a sponge and kind of dabbing it on, and it's just an overall kind of sticky formula. I like Winky Lux products. I just don't think that it's the creamiest one that I have in my collection. I think the staying power is really good because of that stick, and so it is a decent bronzer. I just think that I like a more creamy formula, so while it is good, it wasn't my absolute favorite because it is more of a sticky formula. One that I am really enjoying that is a drugstore is the new release. This is the Oma by Sharon C Flawless IRL Cream Bronzer. This is a cream to powder formula, which I am a huge fan of, I'm coming to find, and I think this is a really good shade. There is the swatch there. It is a pretty light bronzer, which is really nice, but that cream to powder formula is just, I don't know, I'm really, really loving that these days. It's very silky, it's very soft, it's just very easy to apply. I don't know that it has a super long staying power. One of the things that I like doing with cream products is testing out drugstore and high-end, and this is $12 for a cream, like cream to powder formula. I think this is a really good drugstore option, so I have been enjoying that. Another one that you might consider drugstore is the ColourPop cream bronzer. This one is the Super Shock bronzer in Get Sandy. I do like this. What I just dislike about it is how hard I have to dig in here to get the product to come out. I have not been enjoying that. I don't have a better way to get in here than to just kind of dip my sponge into it, and so it's been a little bit complex. We've had a tough relationship because I've only used this a couple of times, but I have made like a significant dent in it, and it's because I'm twirling the sponge around so much just to get the product out, because I do want a good amount of pigmentation. That's the swatch on that one. I would say that I really like my finish on when I put it on, and I really do like that this feels almost like a cream to powder formula. I just don't like how hard I have to work. So all right, highlighters. I have 3 highlighters. Only one of them is a new release. The first one that I have is from Profusion. This is a mousse highlighter. It's called a Whipped Glow highlighter in the shade Sweet Whip. I picked up a bunch of stuff from Profusion in October, and I placed the order for this because I thought it was like a very pinky blush, which is usually not something that I go for. I usually go for something that's more champagne, but this just looked delicious and delightful in its cute little packaging, and it really looks wet on the skin. I have highly been enjoying this product, even though it's this teeny tiny highlighter in kind of a pinky shade, but I thought it was just beautiful. It's pretty affordable. I think it adds something different to my collection because it is kind of like the mousse, like whipped texture that looks really wet in a shade that I don't have a lot of, so I have really been enjoying this. One that is a new release was the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Glow highlighter. I did not like this, but I think that what I did is I picked up a shade that just really wasn't good. It has too much pigment to be a highlighter on my skin, and it was kind of like meshing in with my blush. I don't know, it just had a weird consistency. I didn't think that it was like very metallic at all. It almost seemed like a blush. It was just too pigmented for me. It wasn't the lightest shade that they offer, so that could be the reason. I did mention that I was going to try and pick up a lighter shade to see if I liked this, but I think when I placed the order, I don't know what drew me to this shade. It may have even been that some of the other shades were kind of out of stock, and so I got this one thinking that it would be light enough, but it wasn't. It was just like this weird ick. Like, I just didn't like the texture of it. I didn't like the way that it looked on my skin. It just surely didn't look like a highlighter on me. So this one was not a favorite of mine, unfortunately. I think that a lot of people have been enjoying it. I just can't say that I have. The next product that I have is not a new release. It's the Essence Pure Nude Highlighter. This has gotten a lot of hype over the years, and so I saw it and wanted to give it a shot. I cannot say that this is my absolute favorite. It's a very, very light highlighter, and I think that I like something a little bit more punchy. And so when I was putting this on, I kind of felt like the shade wasn't right. Again, it was just one that had maybe too much color to it. And so it kind of looked a little bit orangey on my skin, and it's not a sparkly highlighter. It's just a very like metallic finish. And so for what it is, I'm just not sure it's my speed. This is the lightest shade that they sell. It is in Be My Highlight. It just almost, it didn't seem like it was showing up on my skin at all. And then when I could tell, I just don't know that it was like punchy enough for what I like. I don't want to declutter this because I do believe that it serves a purpose. It's just a unique highlighter in my collection because it's just one that's very, very minimal. So if I'm going for something like that, I will grab for this. But it's just not very often. If I'm reaching for a highlighter at all, it's because I want it to stand out, and I just didn't think this did that. So it was okay, it just wasn't my absolute favorite. All right, moving on into eyeshadows. So the first two that I have, I will hold them together. So these are the Kaleidos quads that they just released. They were in Flowing Haze, which is a more neutral but purpley color story. And the next one is in Glowing Iris, which is a full purpley color story. So these were new releases. I picked them up right when they released. I did test them out on camera when I was doing testing new makeup, and I did like them. I did like the looks that I created with them. I would say though, after a while, I could tell that these shades were starting to blend together a little bit and my look was looking a little bit muddy. This one, it just on my skin didn't have a lot of variation between the shades. I think that I used this all over. I used this in the crease, this in the outer corner, and that on my lid. And I actually think that doing this in the crease did myself a disservice because I should have maybe just gone with two shades to create more depth. It just kind of seemed like the depth just kind of disappeared, and it was kind of a wash of just one color on my skin. I think the Kaleidos formula is fantastic. I think their shimmer formula is so good. I think that the matte shades are very buttery, very satiny. I really do like their shadows overall. I like the way they perform. I like how long they last. I just feel like the color stories here were a little just bit off for me, at least how I kind of applied them. I think that I would try again with maybe like just one or two of these shades instead of trying to do what they say, which is you do one as a base, you do one in the crease, you do one in the outer corner. They kind of give you that insert that tells you what to do or where to place the shades on the inside, which I've thrown away. So I think the shimmers are gorgeous and beautiful. I think their shadows perform really well. I just didn't know that I found a whole lot of depth in the color stories in these. But if Kaleidos releases more quads or any palette where I think the color story would suit me, I would pick it up just because I like the formula. One palette I just disliked completely was the NYX Ultimate Queen palette. This one, Allure Best of Beauty for drugstore eyeshadows. It may not even have been drugstore, it was just eyeshadows. I thought this was subpar. I think the quality of this were absolutely drugstore. They're worse than some of the drugstore that I've tried. The mattes just weren't great. The shimmers were just okay. I mean, even looking at it, it's kind of lackluster. I don't know why this one. I tried NYX formula for the first time when I tried this eyeshadow palette, and I would literally say that it's just very drugstore, okay quality. It didn't knock my socks off, and I think NYX charges too much for their eyeshadows, quite frankly. I think that you can get even more pan size than this, more variety from other brands out there. I just think that this was a little bit overpriced for what it was. That was my first impressions of NYX quality eyeshadows, and I really just wasn't impressed. Another eyeshadow palette that I did try, this was one that I traveled with, was the Gilded eyeshadow palette from Tarte. So this I think came with the Gilded and Glam. This was a holiday release, and this was the more neutral or pinky color story. I think it was beautiful. The reason that I picked this up is because I liked the color story, but historically Tarte shadows have not been my favorite. I've had multiple Tarte shadows in the past, and I felt like they were very hard pressed. They weren't pigmented enough for me. The shimmers were very lackluster. I just didn't enjoy them. And so I was hesitant to pick this up, but I thought, all right, well, this is a color story that I can get along with. So I want to retest this formula and see if it's any good. And I had been hearing good things about it. I did not test out the Glam palette, just the Gilded one. So I don't want to feature that in this video, but I will probably put it in next month's. I actually thought that all of these shades performed really well. I thought the shimmers were really, really stunning. I believe that the quality is different than some of their Amazonian clay eyeshadow palette formulas that they have released in the past, even for holiday. So I would say this is a good formulation. With Tarte though, I have to say overall, I have better shadows than Tarte. I wouldn't say that like Tarte is one that I will reach for over and over again. I thought it was good. I just didn't think it was the best, if that makes any sense whatsoever. It's not my favorite formulation. I just think it's a good formulation. And part of that is coming from the comparison of not having liked their eyeshadow formulation in the past. I'm gonna move on into the singles. I picked up one from Victoria Beckham. This is one of the lid lusters. This one is in the shade Blonde. I went to Victoria Beckham's website several months back and had placed an order for a couple of things that looked really interesting. This was one of them. I thought this shade looked really beautiful. I wore it like one time and then forgot about it in my vanity, so I put it back, but I think this is beautiful. I wasn't sure at first that like this kind of yellowy shift, but as I started to wear it, I was like, wow, this is really beautiful. The consistency is really nice. It had really good staying power. The color really popped on my eyes. This is pricey. Like all of Victoria Beckham's items are pricey, and so that's why I only picked up one shade. But honestly, I think this is absolutely beautiful. I had a really, really good time using this. I think it'll last me a really long time. And one of the things that I look for when I buy a single shadow, since usually they are a little bit pricey and it's only one, that it adds something to my collection that no other shadow does. And I do find that with this. So I was very, very pleased to get my hands on that and have considered purchasing other shades. Two other singles that are new releases were the Hypnotizing Pop Shots from Charlotte Tilbury. I did pick these up with the cheek palette, and it was kind of a reddish kind of bronzy tone, and then one that is gold. I considered buying the one that was blue, and I was like, oh, will I wear that very often? So the answer to that is no. These are buttery. They are very, very creamy. They are nice and pigmented. They have a little bit of sparkle in them. I just think that they're absolutely beautiful. I think the packaging is great. I think one of the things that drew me in was like, oh, this packaging is adorable. And I thought about not spending $34 a piece on these, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna splurge. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna test the formula. Here is another brand that I've never tried the eyeshadow formula for before. And I've still never tried any of her like matte shades or any of her palettes. These were the only ones that I've tried. I thought these were great. I think they're absolutely beautiful, and I am glad that I picked them up. Okay, we're getting down to it. There's only 3 more categories to go. You might have guessed it, it's mascara. So with mascara, I do have 5 mascaras here, and most of these, all with the exception of one, I do not like them. The first one is from Rimmel. This is the Volume Flash Scandaleyes mascara. So this one I picked up because it looked like a pretty thick brush, and one that was like gonna deposit quite a bit of product, give me a lot of volume. It just didn't. It's a very soft bristled brush, which I like when it's a big brush like this. I just don't prefer big brushes like this. I prefer that it is a much smaller wand, but it wasn't very pigmented. It's a very, very light formula. So I had to build it up with 3 or 4 coats to get it to the pigmentation that I like, and it just wasn't a wet enough formula. I have had this open for about a month, so it should perform how it's gonna perform by now. It just didn't give me the thickening that I really like. It didn't give me the volume. It wasn't overly pigmented. It didn't have like a stark black color. So on all the boxes, for me, it just didn't check really any of them. So I would say this one is not a good one from Rimmel. Next one I have is from Sephora. I did place an order for a full face of Sephora, and this one is the Big by Definition Volumizing and Lash Multiplying Effect Mascara. This is a soft bristled wand, and it is thinner, so I do normally like this, but I absolutely cannot stand the smell. It has like a dirty scent. I don't know what it is. Again, this is another one that I've had open for a little bit more than a month. I have used it a couple of times, and it just doesn't give me the effect that I like. Originally, I liked how pigmented and how wet the formula was, but I didn't feel like it was lengthening. I felt like it was clumping my lashes. I think it just was like kind of unflattering. I think it transferred a lot. It just wasn't my favorite. Another one that's been open for a while is the Glossier Lash Slick. This one has one of the plastic bristle wands. It's smaller. I do like this. It's very similar to some of my favorite mascaras, but this just has no volume, no pigmentation, no thickening. It's a very, very light formula. It's a very, very light finish. It's just not a lot. It feels like it's not a very wet product. There's not a lot in here. I just really didn't care for this. I have very, very thin and light eyelashes, and so I like something that's very, very dark and is really pigmented right off the bat. This is almost just like a no makeup kind of mascara, and that's just not what I'm into. So this one was just a no for me. The next one that I have is the Long at Last mascara from SheGlam. Here is another one where the scent is so strong. It is just a weird wand, and while I think like I get what they were trying to do with this, I just don't find that it really serves the perfect purpose. It has this little tip on the end that I believe is for getting into like the inner part of the lashes. I just don't find that it really works any better than like that side. And the smell is so chemically. It has such a strong smell that when I first opened this, I was like, ooh, I could smell it right away. It just clumps and it transfers, and it just doesn't give me length and volume that I like. It doesn't give me thickening. I just was not a fan of that mascara. The next one I have that I really, really love is the Tower 28 Make Waves mascara. This is a favorite for a lot of people. It is a plastic bristled thinner wand. I do like the wand on this, but I love this mascara for both the upper and lower lashes. It is so pigmented. It is such a wet formula. It is immediately lengthening. It is immediately a thickening mascara to give me a little bit of thickness to my lashes when they're very thin. It gives me volume. It just gives me everything that I look for in a mascara. I think this mascara is like top notch for like mid-range mascaras. This does retail for $20. I do believe that it is still sold out on Sephora's website, but I think it is back in stock on Tower 28's website. This is just an all-around really good mascara. It's a huge thumbs up. It's one that if you haven't tried it, you definitely need to. Moving on to setting sprays, I only have one. This was a BoxyCharm one. This is the Superset from Toy Factory. I did look at Toy Factory's website and I was like, I've never heard of this brand before. Let me check it out. It's a hyaluronic acid setting spray, so it's supposed to be pretty hydrating. And here is the sprayer. It is pretty decent. It's not overpowering. I have used quite a bit of it, but I'm using it at this point to kind of just like wet my brushes. I don't find that it's doing anything. Like I don't feel like it's overly hydrating my face. I don't feel like it's overly setting my makeup, or not overly just doing those things in general. Setting sprays, it's more about like it did something as opposed to it did nothing at all, because a lot of setting sprays I feel like just literally do nothing at all for me. So that's kind of how I felt about this one. So the final category is lip products. I do have quite a few lip products, so I'll try to go through them pretty quickly. This is the new NARS Power Matte Lipstick. This is a new release, I think about a month ago or a month and a half ago. This one is in the shade American Woman. I'm a huge fan of NARS, like matte formulas or just lipstick formulas in general. I think that this was a really comfortable, very creamy matte formula. It had good staying power. It's not like unlike their other power matte formulas that they've had in the past. I just think this was a really good one. I'm glad that I got this shade. I'm never disappointed in NARS lip products. Next one up that I have is an I Need a Nude lipstick from Natasha Denona. I believe this is in Avril. I think this is a really good nude shade. I think it's just a great mauve tone. I think that it's a really nice like cream formula. And the reason that I picked this up, this is the swatch here, is because the new eyeshadow palette that she had, the My Dream palette, came out, and it came out with a collection of like the new lip products, but I decided that I wanted to test out a different older lipstick product because one of my commenters on one of my videos said Natasha Denona lipstick formula was really good, so I picked this up. I wasn't disappointed. I think it's a really good formula. It's very comfortable, very creamy, stays a good amount of time. The next one that I have is from About Face. This is one of their matte liquid lips. This one is in the shade Last Good Night, and they're called the Paint It Liquid Lip. I picked this one up first, and I wasn't sure about the formula initially. It was really drying and I didn't really like it, but I used it a little bit more. I kept it open for a little bit while longer, and I realized that it kind of has like cream formula. It's kind of moussey. It was actually really long lasting, and when I laid it down, when it started to kind of break apart, I would top it with a gloss. It was perfect. It was so good. It was actually very comfortable, and then it stayed on my lips a long time and it would break down evenly without cracking or like drying out my lips or anything like that. I don't know if you can see, but it's starting to kind of dry down now, and it has that very cream, like moussey texture. So actually I wasn't sure about this product. I actually didn't like it, and so I kind of kept it to the side, and then I like figured out how to use it, and then once I did, I really liked the formula so much so that I placed an order for another shade. Another that was a slightly new release but a couple of months ago was the Patrick Ta lipstick and matching lip liner. Both of these are in the shade That's Why She's Late. This is a very red toned lipstick. It's like a satin finish. It's just a very beautiful like blue toned red, and I wasn't sure that it added anything to my lipstick collection until I wore it a couple of times. Then I was like, wow, this is a really interesting formula, a very interesting texture. I'll see if I can kind of get up close. It's just very different. Like it is like almost like a cream to powder finish, and so I noticed that it was quite unique, and it had a really good amount of staying power. It was very nice. The matching lip liner was not my favorite. It's the kind that you click up, so I immediately didn't love that, but I don't love this super thick tip. I just felt like the tip was not as precise as I wanted it to be for what I usually do, and while I can get a good edge, I was kind of using like the other side of it as opposed to like flat, and I don't know that I loved that. And I don't like a lip liner that you kind of have to push up. I get that that's like kind of a formula preservation thing, but for me, I don't know, it wasn't my absolute favorite. I kind of felt like it was bleeding a little bit, so I would say that the lipstick formula, really good. This you can probably pass on. Another one that I was slightly disappointed about was the new reformulation to the KVD Everlasting Liquid Lipsticks. This is called Hyperlight. It was okay when I first got it. I could definitely say that it was very similar formula to the original, but I did travel with it. Here is the swatch there, and it changed in midair. This is in the shade Moth Orchid. I did travel with this. I had really high hopes for this because the Everlasting Liquid Lipstick is one of my favorite, or if not my favorite, formula of liquid lipsticks. And I was so disappointed when this came, and it was like, all right, it's okay. I think the other one had a little bit more staying power. And then when I traveled with it, in the airplane, by the time I landed back in California, the formula had completely changed, and it had almost dried the product out completely. You can hear that it's just not as wet. I've used this like 3 or 4 times, and the product is like nearly gone. It like evaporated at, 30,000 feet in the air, which I think was interesting because I had other liquid lipsticks that I brought with me, but none of them did that, just this one. So I thought that was interesting. When I got there and I was like, why does this feel so light? And then I was like, where is the product? I don't know, the consistency changed 30,000 feet in the air. So I can't say now that I absolutely love it because the formula has kind of changed. I think the few times that I tried it before it went 30,000 feet in the air, it was okay, but I still performed the original formula better. Another matte liquid lipstick is the one from REM Beauty. This one is in the shade Leave a Message. I placed an order for REM Beauty because I wanted to give it a shot, so I think I picked up about 4 or 5 things, and I really love this shade. And initially I really liked the consistency. I just think it turned out to be like overly sticky matte formula. Unlike the Hyperlight Everlasting Liquid Lip from KVD, I feel like this one just like sucked the moisture right out of my lips. It just cracked. You could see every line. It just wasn't good. Like, I know there are matte formulas out there where it doesn't have to dry out your lips, that you could just leave it alone and not top it if you really wanted to. This one you can't. You have to lay a gloss on top of it to rehydrate it because it's just a dry desert if you don't. I do like it when I top it. I just wouldn't say that it's great for a matte liquid lip by itself. Next up, I have a lip oil from Clarins. This one is in the shade 08 Strawberry. This one, Allure Best of Beauty for 2022 for lip oils, so I bought it because of that. It's a large doe foot applicator. I do like this. I don't love it. As much gloss as I was kind of hoping. Like, I don't think it lasted very long. I think it sunk into my lips, so it didn't stay glossy for a long period of time. And honestly, if I was to choose between the Clarins lip oil and the Haus PhD hybrid lip oil, I would say that the Haus Labs one is actually better than this. I like this, but I still kind of feel like there's maybe not a lot of product in it. Like, I have probably used this like 4 or 5 times, and it's like you know, a good chunk of it is gone, where the Haus Labs one I was using for an entire month and it still looks like maybe the same amount of product has been depleted as this one. So I don't know that this is my absolute favorite. I think this was like $27, so it's pretty pricey for a lip oil. I would say it's nice, I just wouldn't say it's worth $27, and I would definitely say I prefer the Haus Labs one over that one. I have another one here. This one is from Tony Moly. This is a jelly lip melt. This is in Candy Cane. So Tony Moly came out with 3 new scents for holiday 2022, and it was like very holiday theme related. This one was in Candy Cane, like I said. It's very cute. It's kind of like in the shape of a bundt cake, but that jelly formula really has me confused. I like the consistency. I think it lasts a good amount of time, but it's a gel. It's like jelly. It's almost like Jell-O. So that's exactly what it is. It's just Jell-O. It feels like Jell-O in a container that you're kind of putting on your lips. So I like the finish when it's on. I would just say that the consistency when I'm putting my finger in it does feel like Jell-O. The final lip product that I have here is from Profusion. It is a lip topper. It's a shimmery lip topper and it's in the shade Cinnamon. It's a doe foot applicator. It is very pinky. The sparkles in it I can feel on my lips when I apply it, but they're not too heavy, so it doesn't bother me, and it actually does fade away after a little while. I like this lip topper because I think it makes my lips look extra juicy. I do like to have kind of a topper or a gloss that has a little bit of color on it for when I'm like topping it for something that's like desert dry like this. So that's why I will have something like this in my collection. This was pretty affordable, bought a bunch of Profusion products, and I did really like this. So that is it. That is everything that I tried in the month of October, maybe a little bit in September. It was quite a bit of stuff. I'm sure this video is very long. I really appreciate you sticking there with me. If you want to make any comments about anything that you may have also tried, and if you liked it and I didn't, or you didn't and I did, then I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, that is it for me today. I am out. I will catch you all in my next one. Bye.